Greetings. Welcome to our Affording College 101 webinar. This webinar is in partnership with our colleagues at uAspire. My name is Jamia Tenney, and I will serve as your host this evening. Here at the Common App, I serve as Director of Student Engagement Programs, where I collaborate with my colleagues across the organization to develop and highlight resources that support students as they navigate the admissions and financial aid processes. We're so happy that you joined us for this webinar this evening, and we know that we will be able to provide valuable information that will assist you as you navigate the affordability processes throughout your application season. During this session, we hope you will understand better the basics of financial aid and college affordability, starting with cost of attendance and the different kinds of financial aid, along with an overview of the affordability timeline. A couple of housekeeping items for you to note. This session is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube page that you joined this evening to join us on the session. So you can always return back to Common App's YouTube page, which is Common App Media, to view this session after it has concluded. If questions arise during the session, please feel free to place them in the chat area. The uAspire team will be monitoring the chat throughout the session, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. Now, I'd like to introduce my colleagues from uAspire who will serve as session facilitators for this evening. First, my colleague Erin Krull is a project manager on the customized support team at uAspire. Erin will be leading the presentation this evening. My colleagues Nick and Leticia will be in the chat area. So as you have questions, they'll be answering your questions during the live session, as well as reserving some questions for the Q&A. So before we get started, I wanted to remind you about some resources that Common App offers on our Paying for College webpage. So if you go to the Common App website, supporting our students, you can find our Paying for College page under Plan for College. There, you'll find a couple of resources. We have a FAFSA advising tool that we partner with our colleagues at Benefits Data Trust to provide Wyatt. It's a texting tool to help you once you start to complete the FAFSA later this year. And then also we connect to some resources that our FSA team provides. So that's the Department of Education, who houses the FAFSA. So you'll be able to visit them and link to the video resources they provide, as well as we provide information about scholarship resources. And you can get a link to the webinar recordings, as this is the third webinar recording in a series of 3 that we have provided. The first being an overview of the FAFSA, the second being an overview of how to review your financial aid award offer, and then today we're talking about affording college. So if you want to reference those, you can always go to our Paying for College website or go directly to our YouTube page. With that, I'm going to kick it off to Erin to start our session.
Thank you so much, Jamia. Hi, everyone. My name's Erin. I'm so happy to be here to talk a little bit more about how to afford college. I know that we just covered these for those of you that have been with us since the beginning, but I'm just going to go over a few things for any folks who just joined. If you have any questions that come up over the course of this presentation, please use the live chat to ask them. My colleagues, Nick and Leticia, will be answering them as they're able to, but they might also refer you to one of our follow-up support resources that we will be covering at the end of today's presentation. Additionally, there will be QR codes that we encourage attendees to scan throughout the presentation so that you can have access to the resources we're discussing. Please have your phones ready when they come up so that you can take advantage of them when they appear on your screen. The resources will also be available in the description, though, so you can access them there if needed. And then lastly, this presentation is geared towards high school juniors and students considering transferring college for the 25-26 academic year. So just know that the information you're about to hear will be relevant for that. And now I'm going to shift to what exactly we'll be talking about today. This will be our agenda for our time together. First, we'll go over some financial aid basics, types of colleges, and the cost of attendance. Then we'll talk about the process for applying for financial aid, what it looks like, what to expect. After that, we'll talk about some next steps in the process. Then we'll let you know the ways in which you can get additional one-on-one support from uAspire. And then finally, we will end with a quick survey to get your feedback on today's presentation and some live question and answer time. So to begin, let's first talk about what types of colleges are out there, because they can be different. They can be 2-year or 4-year, named for the amount of time their programs are designed to be finished in. Although we do recognize that students may take longer than 2 or 4 years to complete school, it's also important to note that graduating on time or early can reduce the overall amount paid for your degree. Schools can be public or private, nonprofit or for-profit. Keep all of these distinctions in mind as you are choosing where you'd like to apply. Today, we're going to discuss the differences between public and private colleges in particular. Public colleges are government funded and offer residents of their state in-state tuition, which tends to cost less. The examples we have listed here are public colleges in Texas, the University of Texas at Austin, and Houston Community College. Private colleges are privately funded, so they receive their funding from students who pay tuition, alumni donations, research grants, and other places. They usually have the same tuition for all students. The 2 private colleges that we've listed here as examples are Tougaloo College and HBCU, located in Mississippi, and Harvey Mudd College, which is located in California. Now we're going to spend just a little bit of time talking about cost of attendance, because before you decide how affordable a college is, you first need to know what the starting cost for that college is. The best place to find the cost of each college is by going to their website. At times, though, these websites can be confusing and they might not provide all of the information you need. So we also recommend checking out Big Future by College Board as another good place to find this info. But just be mindful of the fact that this info could be out of date. If you have any questions about the cost of attendance at your college, say you can't find anything online, you can call the financial aid office. Each college will have different direct costs, which are paid directly to the college, and that can include things like tuition and fees and housing and meal plans. You will receive a bill from the college for these costs in the summer and winter before each term. In addition to these are indirect expenses, which include, but definitely are not limited to, books, laptops, school supplies, transportation, cell phone and internet bills, and other personal expenses. Though these are not typically paid directly to the college, they are a very real part of the cost of being a student. Direct and indirect expenses together will make up the cost of attendance. So now that we've gone through what makes up the cost of attendance, let's check out this chart that shows how different the cost of attendance can be between different types of colleges. Let's use our previous examples here. As you can see, if you're an in-state student in UT Austin, which is a public college, the starting cost tends to be much less than the starting cost for Harvey Mudd, which is a private college. However, cost of attendance is lower at Tougaloo, which is a private HBCU. Cost of attendance can vary widely across and within college types. Although we do not list an example here, you should keep in mind that if you are considering public colleges that are not where you are not a resident of that state, the starting costs tend to resemble those of a private college more closely because you will be paying out-of-state tuition at those institutions. Even though cost of attendance can be a very high number for some colleges, especially at first glance, most students and their families do not pay these total amounts because they are receiving financial aid. While knowing the cost of attendance of these colleges you are considering is essential, do remember that financial aid will help reduce these costs. Now we can see the cost of attendance is not necessarily an indication of how much you will pay. After financial aid is applied, the amount you will pay for college out of pocket, also called net costs, are lower. Here are the average financial aid awards for each of these colleges for families with an income below $30,000. As you can see, financial aid can significantly decrease the amount you have to pay to attend college. While these graphs and numbers might be a lot to take in, especially if you're new to this process. The most important thing to keep in mind here is that there is a lot of financial aid available to help you go to college. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what is available for you. Basically, there are three main types of financial aid: grants and scholarships, loans, and work study. And each of these can be used to pay your college bill and any additional expenses that could come up. Over the next few slides, we're going to look at each of these in detail. First, let's focus on scholarships, which are one of the best types of financial aid since they do not need to be repaid. In my experience, it's typically what students ask about first. They can come from the college, the state, the federal government, or even outside organizations. Scholarships are awarded for various reasons, so make sure to keep an eye out for scholarships that you may qualify for. Many do come with requirements around maintaining a certain GPA or sticking with a specific major. It's also important to pay attention to the amount of time that the scholarship applies to. Many are only available for 1 year. We often have second-year students who realize that a scholarship that they received their first year won't be available for their second year. If you end up receiving 1-year scholarships, it's really important to plan for future years for how you will cover the cost of attending that college without the scholarship. High school juniors can start looking for scholarships right now to familiarize yourself with what is out there and available. Most scholarships will have deadlines starting in August and continuing until about May or so, so we recommend researching and applying throughout your senior year. Current college students who plan to transfer can apply to scholarships too. There are so many scholarships available now for current college students and even transfer students. If you haven't already, we also recommend starting your search and applying to the ones that best fit you. Grants are another type of financial aid that doesn't need to be repaid, similar to scholarships. While the two are, they have this common characteristic, grants tend to be need-based and funded by the government or college, while scholarships are more merit-based. The most common grant we see is the Pell Grant, which is a need-based grant from the federal government. Your eligibility for the Pell Grant depends on your Student Aid Index, or SAI, which is determined by information provided on your FAFSA. And don't worry, we will go a little bit more into detail about what that is a bit later. States tend to offer financial aid through grants as well. The type of grant will vary based on the state that you live in. You should check with the Office of Higher Education in your state to see what grants may be available for you. Switching to loans. Loans are borrowed money that needs to be repaid with interest, meaning that a student who borrows money to pay for college will then pay back that amount of money plus some extra. While not the most popular type of financial aid for good reasons, loans are a part of many financial aid offers, and the most common loans are federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. For subsidized loans, the federal government pays the interest while you are in college. For unsubsidized loans, the borrower is responsible for all the interest, including interest accrued while in college. Your state or college may also have their own loan programs. You should make sure to check interest rates for different loans, as some are much better than others. Check interest rates and use loan calculators to understand how much borrowing each loan will cost you. uAspire does not recommend borrowing loans without exploring all other options for paying for college first. If you do decide to borrow loans, though, make sure you are maximizing your federal direct loans before considering any private or PLUS loans. Finally, let's talk about work study, which is the last type of financial aid that we'll be discussing today. Work study is money earned from work, much like a regular part-time job, except that the money is from the college or the government, and they can be much more flexible with students' schedules than an outside job typically is. If work study is listed on your financial aid offer, it means you can apply for a work study job on campus, and you will be able to earn up to the amount offered, which is usually the maximum you can earn. And there is no guarantee that you can earn that amount. Having this listed also does not guarantee you a work study job. However, keep in mind that work study money is not available all at once, but rather available a bit at a time through paychecks based on the hours you work. So now that we've talked about what college costs and what financial aid is, let's get into the timeline of events that you will be going through as a high school senior. You might complete some or all of these steps again if you are a college student planning to transfer. Getting financial aid for college can feel like a lot, but these 8 major steps are generally what most students need to navigate during their senior year of high school or before transferring to a new college. You may need to complete more steps than this depending on your family situation, the state that you live in, and the colleges that you're applying to. Consider this list as a good starting point and a place to build onto as you understand more of what your state and colleges are asking you to do. We're going to touch on each of these steps in the coming slides. I do want to note one important thing, though, about the FAFSA. It will be returning to its traditional opening date of October 1st next academic year. So for any high school juniors or potential transfer students, just know that the 25-26 FAFSA is the one that you will be filling out, and it will open on October 1st, 2024 this fall. So far, we've talked about college costs and financial aid. Now let's talk about what you will need to do to make college an affordable option for you. You probably have a good idea of some of the colleges you'd like to apply to, or maybe you've even started building your college list, and that's really great. We recommend also including a few colleges you know you can get into and you also know you can afford. These are called financially safer schools. This will help make sure you have a full range of options when making your college decision. We recommend every student includes a financially safer option or two on their college list. These schools will be different for every student depending on grades, the money you have available to help pay for college, and several other factors. It could mean that you include a college within commuting distance to decrease the cost of housing and meal plans. It could be a community college, or for students with very high GPAs, it could be a competitive college that meets full financial need. Some other things to consider when adding to your college list are the cost of attendance compared to the average financial aid offered for families in your income range, and some other student outcomes like graduation and retention rates. Overall, when building your college list, make sure to include a variety of colleges on it, even if they seem out of reach or expensive. Later, when you are making a decision, it will be good to have a variety of options to choose from. There are a lot of resources available out there to help you build your college list and identify financially safer schools, but the College Scorecard is the best and the most up-to-date resource for finding stats on your potential colleges. It is a tool that can help you learn about the schools you may be interested in. It can tell you about what type of school it is, average costs and financial aid offered, acceptance and graduation rates, and so much more. Be sure to check it out later today, tomorrow, or throughout your college process. It's just great to have as a reference. Okay, so we are about halfway through the presentation, so I'm going to switch things up for a second. We're going to do a very quick pulse check to give everyone a breather, time to absorb all the information you just learned, and we're going to, go over some of the terms and things we just talked about. So I'm going to ask you all a question, and that question is, what can help lower the cost of attending college? And please answer what you think the right answer is in the chat. There will be options to choose from. So is it A, going to college in another state? Or maybe it's B, filling out the FAFSA to qualify for grants, loans, and work study. Or possibly maybe it's C, not applying for scholarships. So I'm going to give everyone a second to absorb this question. Feel free to comment which answer you think is right. I'm seeing B so far. Keep sending them in. Leticia and Nick will respond to them. I'll give it just a little bit longer before I reveal the answer. Thank you guys so much for participating. Okay, final call. Make sure to send it in. Okay, drum roll for the answer, and it is B, filling out the FAFSA to qualify for grants, loans, and work study. As we just talked about, the FAFSA can qualify you for a lot of different aid opportunities, so it's important to fill it out. If you go to college in another state, you'll have to pay out-of-state tuition in most cases, and By not applying to scholarships, you're not going to receive any scholarships. So that definitely won't lower the cost of attending college. Thank you guys so much for participating in that. Let's hop back into the presentation. So you just built your college list and you are applying. You're also going to be applying for financial aid to help cover some of the costs of college. The first step in the financial aid application process is to create an FSA ID. An FSA ID is a username and a password that you will use to start and submit the FAFSA and access other items on the federal student aid website. To create an FSA ID, you will need your unique email address and a phone number, plus at least one multi-factor authentication option. We recommend that you set up multi-factor authentication with your phone number, email, and an authenticator app. Both you and at least one parent will need to create an FSA ID at least a week before starting the FAFSA. Some students may need both parents or their spouse, if applicable, to create FSA IDs as well. It will depend on your family. This can be a bit confusing at times, so make sure to check out uAspire's resources to help guide you through the process. They are linked on the slide, and some of them might be in the description below as well. When you do create your accounts, be sure to keep your FSA ID information in a safe place, since it serves as a legal signature, is used to borrow loans, and to sign your FAFSA. If your parent already has an FSA ID, they don't need to create a new one. The FAFSA is one of the most well-known steps in the financial aid process. We've mentioned it a few times already. It is required to submit the FAFSA every year if you want to receive federal financial aid. It can also be required to receive financial aid from your state and the college you plan to attend. As we stated before, this year the FAFSA will return to its traditional opening date of October 1st, so plan to submit the FAFSA as soon as it opens this fall. It can be good practice to gather the information you need before starting the FAFSA. At the end of this presentation, we will be including a QR code to access these slides so that you can take advantage of our checklist, gather all the materials, and stay on track. Just know, though, that the 25-26 FAFSA, the one that's opening this fall, will require your family's 2023 tax information. A few days after you submit the FAFSA, you'll receive an email notification saying that your FAFSA submission summary is ready to review. This is a summary of the information you listed on the FAFSA, and it will flag any issues that might have come up in processing your information. The FAFSA submission summary will also let you know whether or not you've been selected for verification and provide you with your official SAI. Additionally, once your FAFSA submission summary is available, you can go back in the FAFSA and add any colleges that were not added to your FAFSA initially, as well as make any necessary corrections to the form. The Student Aid Index, or SAI, which I've mentioned a few times, is a number that determines your eligibility for certain types of financial aid. It will appear on your FAFSA submission summary after you submit the form. For example, if you have an SAI between -1,500 and 0, you'll be eligible for the full amount of the federal Pell Grant. As your SAI increases, the amount of Pell Grant you are eligible for will decrease. The colleges, states, and federal government use SAI as a measure of need, and it is not the exact amount that you will have to pay for college. While this is an indication of your financial aid need, colleges are not always able to offer you the financial aid you're eligible for. Unfortunately, there are limitations to eligibility when it comes to filling out the FAFSA. Certain statuses like undocumented, DACA, or other ineligible non-US citizens are not able to receive federal financial aid. However, depending on the state that you live in, you may be able to fill out additional state forms. We have a resource linked here that shows each state's policies. You should check with your state to see if you are eligible to receive state financial aid and maybe even fill out an alternative state financial aid form. Colleges also have their own policies regarding institutional aid eligibility. We recommend building your college list and including colleges that may be able to give you institutional aid. If you are undocumented, we do recommend calling the colleges you're planning to apply to assess what their financial aid policies are for undocumented students. Sometimes colleges even have dedicated web pages on their websites for undocumented students. So make sure to check there as well. And then finally, keep in mind that scholarships may also have specific policies about citizenship. Check out these scholarship resources to see some scholarships that undocumented students are eligible for. Some colleges require another form called the CSS profile to distribute their institutional funds, which are funds directly from the college. Students would complete the CSS profile on top of the FAFSA to access the college's financial aid. While undocumented students can't fill out the FAFSA to receive federal funds, at colleges that require the CSS profile, they could fill out the application, meaning the CSS profile, to receive institutional funds, regardless of their status, if the college's policies allow it. Typically, the colleges that require this form are private competitive colleges, but you can check to see if any of the colleges you are applying to require it at cssprofile.org. If you are applying to colleges that require the CSS profile, it becomes available on October 1st. It is much more in-depth than the FAFSA, so it will take a bit longer to complete. In addition, there is a fee to submit the form, but there are fee waivers available, and they're automatically applied for students with aggregate gross incomes under $100,000. Verification is one of the steps that might show up on your FAFSA submission summary or after you complete the CSS profile. It is a process that the federal government and colleges use to ensure that you receive the financial aid that you deserve. If you are selected for verification, it does not mean that you did anything wrong. The best thing you can do if a college reaches out and requests certain documents is to provide them in a timely manner. Colleges may ask you to fill out specific worksheets, provide copies of tax transcripts, or copies of other documents like a passport or a birth certificate. Colleges will reach out about verification by email or by putting a request in your college portal. If you don't respond to verification requests, you might not be able to access your financial aid. If you have questions, you should talk to your counselor, advisor, or reach out directly to the college. Okay, so now that you've applied for college and for financial aid, it's time to talk about how to review your options and then ultimately make a decision. As you navigate through the financial aid process, you are working towards receiving a financial aid offer, which lists the amount of financial aid that a specific college will give you if you attend that college. You should expect to receive a financial aid offer a few weeks after being accepted to a college. Each college will provide you with a different amount of financial aid, so it will be very essential to review them to understand the financial implications of your different options. uAspire has a really great tool called the College Cost Calculator that can help with this, that we will discuss in more detail in a minute or two. You can see an example of a financial aid offer from Binghamton University here on this slide. It's just a good little screenshot of what you could potentially see as you start receiving financial aid offers in the future. Because students will receive different financial aid offers from each college, they will be expected to pay different amounts to each school. Some tips on how to start thinking about cost are first to determine how many years you will need to attend each school to receive the degree you'd like. For many students, if their financial situation doesn't change dramatically, the financial aid will stay relatively similar from year to year. The calculation we find helpful at uAspire is the estimated bill before and after loans. This calculation starts with the direct costs and estimates how much you will have to pay directly to the college for each year that you plan to attend. Once you know the bill, you will need to then think about indirect expenses for each option too. For example, if one college is out of state and requires you to fly, while another college you can commute to, then these indirect travel costs will be very different. Make sure to think about your specific situation to inform what you will need to cover for 1 year. uAspire's College Cost Calculator, which I mentioned briefly earlier, is a free online tool that helps students compare financial aid offers, know what college will really cost, and helps make sure you are making a financially informed decision. We have a QR code in the bottom right-hand corner that will take you to the College Cost Calculator if you want to check it out. This is an example of the summary page from the College Cost Calculator. You can see the second university gives over twice as much financial aid, which looks appealing, but once we factor in the total direct cost differences, it becomes obvious that the first university is actually more affordable. This is why it's really important to understand the estimated total bill for each of your colleges before you make your decision. This slide will show you a few of the options for students when they are thinking about how they will cover their bill. So you've received your financial aid offer and say there's a certain amount that you need to cover yourself. This is a great guide for what options you have available. We will review these briefly today, but as you make your college decision next spring, it may make sense to take a closer look at each of these options. First is outside scholarships. They are a great way to cover the estimated bill, but make sure you start early and prioritize local scholarships. We recommend using scholarship search engines to help you identify scholarships that you qualify for and then apply to those scholarships. Check out uAspire's guide for finding and applying for scholarships for support with the scholarship search process. If you work a job over the summer before the fall semester starts at college, then you can use those earnings to help cover your bill. Also, sometimes students' families have savings available or set aside that can be used to pay for college as well. If you talk about finances early with your family, then you will know what you have available to help cover your bill. Many colleges also offer tuition payment plans that allow you to pay your tuition over the course of the academic year in monthly installments. Some even offer multiple payment plan options. Just keep in mind that there is a registration fee for these plans, but there will be no interest if you enroll in them. Additionally, there is the option to use the Parent Plus loan to help cover the estimated bill. It is a federal loan that allows parents to borrow money to cover any costs not already covered in the financial aid package. However, just remember that the parent will be responsible for this loan and there are requirements to qualify for it. And then finally, you can consider private loans. Like other loans, this is borrowed money that will need to be repaid with interest. Students should check the interest rates and terms for private loans before borrowing because they will vary across the board. uAspire does not recommend borrowing additional loans, so while the Parent Plus loans and private loans are an option to help cover the bill, you should avoid them if possible since they are not as favorable as federal direct loans. As you are navigating the financial aid process and the college decision process, here are some tips we have for you. Apply to a variety of colleges. This will help make it so you have different types of schools to choose from when you make your decision. Talk about finances early to understand where you may be getting additional support and if there are any family funds available to help you pay the bill. As I briefly mentioned earlier, discussing finances can help ensure you are making your college decision with a clear understanding of the resources available. Talking about finances can be uncomfortable, but it is very important to do when making such a big financial decision. As mentioned before as well, you should think about college beyond the first year. Will a certain college be affordable for the number of years it will take you to receive a degree? Most colleges don't get cheaper year over year, and while financial aid usually stays pretty consistent, the cost can go up. Be prepared to look at the total time to get a degree when considering the cost. If you are borrowing loans, you'll also need to consider the long-term costs of borrowing. Many students need to borrow federal direct loans to attend, and understanding how much you will need to pay back should be a factor in your decision. So now that we are nearing the end of the content of this presentation, I just want to go over a few additional steps that you can take to make sure you are prepared to navigate this process successfully. Create an FSA ID now so that when the FAFSA becomes available, you are ready to go. In October, make sure to complete your FAFSA if you are currently a high school junior or are planning to transfer to a new college for the 25-26 academic year. Start talking about college costs with your family and building your support team to help answer your questions and provide guidance throughout the year. And finally, there are more steps in the financial aid process that you will need to complete, and we are here to help along the way. So let's talk about some of the ways you can get help with your specific situation and get further individualized support. There's also going to be a few QR codes on the slides ahead that you can scan to access some great resources. If you want to take advantage of these, then please have your cameras ready. Just note that some of them might be in the description as well, and I believe they will be sent in the chat. Be sure to check out uAspire's resource page, which has tons of helpful resources like videos, checklists, blog posts, and more that cover topics across the financial aid spectrum. Most of the stuff that you learned about today probably has a resource that we've created that will help you through that part of the process. Feel free to scan this QR code in order to access our resources page, but again, like I said, it should be in the description or in the chat. If you have any additional questions that come up after today, I encourage you to reach out to student support at uaspire.org. We can respond with an answer to your question. We can offer some great resources or provide you with personalized advice for your specific situation. This is the best way to contact us if you would like support with the process. And then finally, before we transition into the survey and Q&A, we just want to give everyone the opportunity to scan this QR code so that you can access a PDF copy of the presentation that you saw today. I encourage everyone to look through it on their own time again, because it will have all the links to the resources that you saw embedded in the slides and highlighted throughout this presentation. I'll leave this up just for a second, but I do believe that will be sent in the chat as well so you can access it. Okay, I see that the resources are being sent in the chat, so I'm going to move forward. Just look there if you weren't able to scan it. I'm going to pass the mic back over to Jamia for the session survey, and I believe then we will start the Q&A.
All right, thank you, Erin. Thanks for that informative presentation that provided lots of information that I know will be valuable to students as they navigate the affordability process. I ask that you take a moment right now to either scan the QR code on your screen, or we're also going to place a link in the chat to our quick session survey. Please, if you get a moment, please complete that survey and let us know. Give us your feedback about the session. Let us know how these resources were helpful to you. We love to hear your feedback. Now, let's just jump right into the Q&A session. We're going to answer some questions that you left over in the chat. If you have more personal questions that are related to your specific affordability plan, feel free to reach out to the uAspire team. Their email address is noted there, and we'll take some questions right now. So Erin will join me back on the screen and we'll get started. Question number 1, Erin. For public colleges, do out-of-state tuition cost more than in-state tuition, or does it depend on the college?
For out-of-state public colleges, so if, say, you are a student in New York and you're applying to a college in Tennessee and it's a public college, you're going to have to pay out-of-state tuition, which does cost more. It varies depending on the state. I've seen a difference. I've seen like in-state tuition be $20,000 and out-of-state tuition be $40,000 in my experience. So again, check with the state, but it can be a big difference. As I said during the presentation, it can resemble the cost of attending a private college. So if you're seeking to take advantage of in-state tuition, make sure you're looking in your state, because you will meet the residency requirements to qualify for in-state tuition in that state.
All right, next question. Does it benefit you to apply earlier rather than later for the FAFSA in terms of aid?
That is a great question. So my rule of thumb is the earlier the better. The FAFSA, there are a bunch of different deadlines at any given point during the financial aid process. The federal government has its own FAFSA deadlines, states have their own FAFSA deadlines, and schools have their own FAFSA deadlines. It can be really confusing to keep track of who has which deadline when. So I'd say the best practice is to apply as quickly as you can, fill out the FAFSA as soon as it comes out so that you can make sure that you are meeting deadlines. Some states have, March 1st is their deadline. Other states have first come, first serve for financial aid. So again, just rule of thumb is fill out the FAFSA as soon as possible so that you're making sure you qualify for any financial aid deadlines that a school, a state, or the government could have.
Alrighty. The next question is applying for FAFSA like first come, first serve?
Yeah. So it really depends on the state. I don't have a list on the top of my head, but I'll sort of break down the different deadlines that are operating. So there is the FAFSA each year is open from July 1st until June 30th the following year. The federal deadline is normally June 30th. Each state, though, will have its own deadline. Those have been shifting around a lot this year with things going on with the FAFSA, but it can sometimes be May 1st, it can be March 1st. In some states, it is first come, first served. So that basically means that the state is going to give priority consideration for state financial aid to the FAFSAs it receives the earliest. A lot of colleges don't operate like that. They typically have priority FAFSA deadlines that are a specific date. I've seen them as early as December. Some are in March. I think March 1st is the most common date that we see. But first come, first serve typically just means that a state or a college is going to give priority consideration for financial aid to the people who submitted their FAFSAs first.
And I'd like to plug here that if you're using the Common App website to search for colleges and creating your Common App account, you can explore the admissions websites of our member colleges. There you'll find admissions information about their timelines, like their priority FAFSA deadlines and other financial aid scholarship deadlines as well that are available. So we encourage you to take advantage of that tool. Create your Common App account, add your colleges to your Explore Colleges tab. You can visit their profiles to find out that specific information for that university. We have over 1,000 colleges that you can choose from there. Last question that we have. What if your family doesn't file their taxes?
Yeah, and I know that can be very confusing to navigate because the FAFSA does require a lot of tax information. It asks a lot of questions about finances. There are a couple of things or factors that it will depend on your family situation. Some people, their family might not be required to file taxes. There are certain thresholds that you need to meet to be required to file taxes for a given year, and it will depend on your filing status for your parent or parents. If they weren't required to file taxes, then you will be fully eligible for federal, state, and institutional aid. However, it can be a bit trickier. Say you were in the United States and you made enough money that would require you to file taxes that year. That can affect your eligibility for federal and state aid. It doesn't necessarily mean you won't receive it, but typically people will have certain questions and things like that. So if this is the case for you, I would recommend reaching out to uAspire or reaching out to your colleges. You might be eligible for institutional aid, but it will vary based on policies. And if you weren't in the United States at the time and you didn't have to file taxes, or you filed taxes in a different country, you can fill out the FAFSA. So just know that that is an option. If you want more information on that process, please reach out to us. And then finally, if you didn't work at all for a given year, so you didn't have to file taxes, you're fully eligible to fill out the FAFSA and receive financial aid.
Sounds great. And that concludes our question and answer period. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to the uAspire team. They'll be happy to assist you with any additional questions that you may have. You can also find lots of those answers by visiting Common App's pages, whether it's our Paying for College page. You also find here the websites for uAspire as well as Common App and our social media handle. So thanks so much for joining us for this webinar. We were delighted to host you this evening. Again, if you need to refer back to this webinar, feel free to visit our YouTube page to do that. We hope you have a wonderful evening, a beautiful summer, and we look forward to supporting you in your journey as you navigate the affordability process. Be well. Bye-bye.